to heat up your frozen dinners, grab your TV tray, and settle in for another episode of the Plus Platoon, your podcast for all things Disney Plus, brought to you by Disney Plus fans. Watch along with us every week as we cover all the new, the old, the good, and the bad on Disney Plus. So put down that remote, don't touch that dial, and welcome your fabulous Plus Platoon host.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Plus Platoon. My name's Derek, and I'm one of the lovely members of the Plus Platoon. The Plus Platoon, we are a Disney Plus fan podcast that gives honest, spoiler-filled reviews of movies and shows on Disney Plus. We look at new releases, coming attractions, and we'll even go back into the vault to revisit some of the classic Disney that's on the platform. Find us at youtube.com/plusplatoon and on Facebook. Make sure you're subscribed so you'll never miss a moment. Now, me by myself is not a platoon. So I'm going to bring in first my girl, Kate.
Hey.
Kate, how you doing this evening?
Oh, I am here and I am so ready to talk about all things second star to the right and straight on till morning.
Yeah, I hope you're thinking of wonderful thoughts. So on that note, let's bring in potentially a namesake, Peter. Peter, how you doing this evening, whatever time it is?
Nailed it.
Yes. Thanks. Welcome. I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about this movie because, it's one of my favorite rides, too. So
okay.
Yep.
And last but certainly not least is Rebecca.
Hi.
Rebecca, how you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. So, as always, going to start off with the Disney Plus news. Into that, I'm going to go to Kate. Kate, what we got tonight?
Oh, get excited, everybody. It is one of your favorite times for Disney Plus news. First of all, a new Marvel trailer came out. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. There's so much in it. If I listed all of it, we'd be here all night. But they talk about lots of new movie titles and release dates. So if you're a big Marvel fan, which I know most of you are, go check that out. Also, we've got Loki, which debuts on June 9th. And hold up, it premieres on Wednesdays. So I know we've been used to things coming out on Fridays. We're still going to figure out how we're going to talk about things in the Plus Platoon. Don't worry. Loki debuts on June 9th.
That should be a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to that one the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think it looks like it looks like something that can hold my attention, which I've ever since WandaVision I've really wanted for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how things go. Tonight we are going way back into the vault and reviewing the 1953 Peter Pan, based on the original James Barrie play from about 1900. So, first question, and we definitely want to hear from everyone. What makes you think of a wonderful thought? What do you like about Peter Pan and what works today? Pete, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, I have to say that I still enjoy this movie for what it is, which is just kind of a basic kids adventure movie. For its time, I think like the plot is very tight. It moves very quickly. There's no real boring parts to the movie. I think it's good. I know my daughter, when she was younger, really enjoyed the movie and watched it quite often. So I've seen it a bunch of times. And it's not the worst movie to have to see over and over again. There's some really good songs in it. And there's definitely some things to like about it. We'll talk about some problems with it too, but overall I think it's an entertaining little movie. What about you, Rebecca?
I'm with you. To be fair, this is my first time actually watching it full all the way through ever.
That's fair.
And I know that it's big in Disney, and obviously they have rides and all this other stuff and the shows and the character meet and greets and all this stuff. And I know it was big, and I know the story of it. but I just had never watched the movie. So I was excited to actually get to sit down. Some of the good things that I liked about it, and this was not particularly in the movie, but when you go and watch the movie on Disney Plus, there's a big 10-second warning screen that just happens right away. And the warning screen basically says that there are things in the movie that are not on brand for Disney anymore. And they, rather than showing or shying away from it and removing the movie from the platform because they know how much of following and how dear it is to a lot of people, that they would rather learn from this and grow. And I thought that was really awesome to have that pop up right away. And then the other thing that I really, really liked about the movie is that for most animated movies now, the sound effects you get from things are just actual sounds, versus with Peter Pan, it was all band usage and choral sounds that they were using. And so it was a lot of instruments that were throughout the whole movie. And I really liked that Tinkerbell always had a little flute following her. And if things crashed and fell, it was drums and not just thuds and smacks and stuff like that. So that was one of the two things that really popped out to me. What do you think?
Well, don't hurt your nuts.
Yeah, I know.
So, I definitely, I think Pete's two of the most probably iconic Disney songs are in this movie. Second Star to the Right and You Can Fly.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say those are two. I love the animation. The colors still hold up as vibrant. You go back and you look at some of the Fantasias and some of those and don't necessarily hold up as bright and look as sharp. I think Peter Pan has held up on the animation. I also really like, for the story, how faithful it is to the original James Barrie play. It is part of the reason for that is because Disney actually doesn't own the copyright to Peter Pan. The copyright in the U.S. and United Kingdom are still to the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital, as was sent there. But it was sent there by James Barrie. He's the one who gave the rights to them. So that's why you might not see it on TV as much. The original Peter Pan is because everything Peter Pan, Disney actually has to still pay a royalty for. So, but I know it's fun. It's one of those, if it's on, I'll watch it. And again, a lot of good memories. So, Kate, what'd you like about it?
Oh man. So I have to agree with Rebecca. I didn't watch this movie because we watched the 1960 Mary Martin stage movie of it.
Okay.
So that was what I grew up watching was that version. As opposed to, because I think I'd seen bits and pieces, especially working for the park, but for the company, but this is the first time I watched it all the way through. Well, first of all, Nana, the dog, is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I just resonated with that dog the whole time. And I never realized just that Wendy is the most sane and progressive character of the show. Like every time someone said something derogatory to her, she literally was like, "What?" And like when the boys were being wild and
idiot boys
and being wild and saying inappropriate things, she literally was like, "John, Michael, boys." So and I loved that. I never realized how sane she was, especially from the romanticized version of her. Mm-hmm. I pictured her a little bit more flighty and a little bit more, oh, okay, whatever. And she wasn't. She was very, very wise. So I also agreed with Rebecca about the music. Just so classic. I also recognized voices, the voice actors. I was like, I have heard this voice before. Wendy was Alice in Wonderland.
Alice, yes.
Mm-hmm. And Smee was the White Rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so there was just so many things that I was like, man, I recognize this. Yeah, I'm sure there was more good things. But I think I want to touch on the Not so good things first.
We'll get there. Yeah. Yeah. Ryan says, Ryan thinks, says, listen, Peter Pan is great, but the best thing, okay. But the best thing about Peter Pan is the 1991 movie Hook. No.
I never watched that one either.
No. Robin Williams is a grown-up Peter Pan.
It's so good.
Dustin Hoffman is Hook. Tinkerbell is Julia Roberts. Bob Hoskins is Smee. I mean, it's got a great cast, but
there's good.
It was a Steven Spielberg.
There's good bits in it, and I remember. Yeah. I don't think I've seen it since I saw it in the theaters. I was probably never more disappointed in a movie than I was with that movie, seeing it in theaters. Maybe I should see it again, but it's. I don't know. I didn't like it.
The best thing to come out of Peter Pan is probably Tinkerbell, and not the Tinkerbell that's inside the movie Peter Pan, but everything else that she did afterwards.
Yeah.
All the rest of the movies were great. I remember when they had Pixie Hollow and Epcot, and it was like amazing to get to go meet all of the other fairies that were around. So I think that was really nice.
Ryan, don't worry. I have your back. Rufio I loved Hook. I love when the little boy touches his face and he goes, "It's you, Peter." Like, so good. But again, that was that whole child actor, like that kid comedy. The same reason I like Mighty Ducks, the same reason I like The Sandlot. It still had that feel to it. So it's not surprising that I was a big fan.
Interesting fact. Rebecca, you mentioned Tinkerbell. Do you know why Tinkerbell did the intro to the Disneyland and does the whole wonderful world of Disney? Do you know why he used Tinkerbell? Pete, I think I told you two ladies off screen, but Pete, do you know why he used Tinkerbell?
I'm not exactly sure, so I'll let you say.
Okay. It is because he was afraid the Disneyland show would fail, and he didn't want to use the Mickey Mouse or the Donald Duck or any of his core characters. Tinkerbell was new, and if it didn't work, okay, he could write her off and it would be fun. It would be fine. So, just interesting facts about Tinkerbell. Okay, Kate, let's start off. What makes Tink's light fade away? What is not so great about this movie?
Man, in certain aspects, it did not age well. There's so much. I actually wrote one down because I was like, I have to remember to say that. When Hook says a jealous female can be tricked into anything, I literally threw a pillow. Yeah, it's the way they talk about females. I mean, I'm not even going to touch on all of the Indian stuff. I'll let you guys handle that. But and even Tinkerbell, like she's like looking at herself and then she puts her hands on her hips and then she goes like this. And like, I was like, sis, do you know how good you look in that little getup you got there? Like, what? Like, why was that needed? You know, even in 1952 or 3, whenever this came out. So, yeah, just the part, and like I said, I'm going to let you guys touch on the other stuff, but the part that just kept pulling me back was the I don't want to say degrading of women, because I don't know if degrading is the right word, but just the subtle or not so subtle, like, oh, you're just a woman. You are just a mother. You are just a sister. It just, like, I just sat there like this. And I was just, oh my gosh. There's so much good about that movie. And just, yeah. I'm going to pass it. I'm going to pass it to you, Pete.
Yeah, I think that's what I want to say. I mean, there's clearly racial issues with the portrayal of the Indians in this. Realizing it's from 1950, I think we can understand, where society was at the time, and there was a lot of kids did two things. They played cowboys and Indians, and they played like pirates, right, at that time. And so it was kind of matching to society, but in today's society, you would definitely not portray it that way. I honestly think the portrayal of women in this movie is worse because while the racial portraits are not very positive, they're kind of more played as humorous, which is still not good, but like women are, to me, they're either played as damsel in distress, mother, or jealous, some nice word for women, right? I mean, you got Tinkerbell just plays jealous the entire movie, basically, for no reason, really, because Peter never acts like he's attracted to Wendy at any point. He just wants her as a mother to tell him stories, yet Tinkerbell's crazy jealous. He brings him to the mermaids. The mermaids are crazy jealous. He rescues Tiger Lily, who has no lines at all in the movie. And then Wendy's crazy jealous. And it's just like, and as you said, like the way, they portrayed Tinkerbell worrying that her butt was fat. And it was just like, especially considering I watch a lot of other Disney movies, and while they might not necessarily be, as progressive as modern day women, they're not as insulting as this is. And I think as kids watching it, I worry more for that portrayal than I do for the Indian portrayal, I guess. And I don't think that would stop me from watching the movie with my kids, but like I've talked about it with my daughter, like, this isn't really how you should treat women. This is a kind of a boy fantasy movie. And I mean, even Wendy, I mean, I do agree with you. Like, she isn't put up with much. So she's maybe portrayed a little better than all the others, but still she's really just there as the nurturer. Right. And that's was one of the negatives of movies back in that time, is women were either the nurturers, the sex pots, or the damsel in distress. And that was kind of it, and I totally agree with what you're saying. So.
Yeah, for me, there were only really two. And Kate, when I tell you that there were two things that I wrote down in my notes, one of them being the overall depiction of Native Americans and their culture, and then the second one being the exact scene of Tinkerbell looking down and doing the thing with her hips and then getting angry and just like disgusted. And like, there are no two things in modern day times that I care about more than racial issues and body positivity. And so by the time that the first like 10 minutes of the movie had passed, I didn't even know at any point that they had talked negatively about women. There was one thing that Peters said, which Sam brought up, where she says, even Peter says that girls talk too much. And I looked at him like with a stank face. I was like, okay, well, why are you talking? Like, she's doing something nice for you and to help you, and you're over here just, being so negative about it. And I felt personally like, this is something that not a lot of people know about me, and you really couldn't even tell, but like, I have Native American roots, and I can track that in my family, and I have pictures and relatives and stuff. And it's like, to hear Captain Hook talk about them as Redskins, as savages, as all these things, even the animation of the characters were literally red and orange. And it's like, that to me was so in your face. Like, these people
and
are
the song is really bad.
Oh, it's horrible. And to me, it's just so in your face. Like, these are bad. These are horrible people. These are bad people. Like, and it's not that old.
See, I don't think it was because I don't think they were because again, they were showing the natives as against the boys, but then they were saying, okay, basically that we play with them. We're, we play, we're on one side, they're on the other side. If we catch them, they let us go. If they catch us, so they're not really saying they're savages. They're saying they're playmates. I that's the way I see it, which is why I think it's not quite as bad as it could be. I mean, it's not
To
good.
me,
I'm not trying to say it's good.
I hear you on that. To me, it's more of like, you know what's underneath the surface of that. Sure, on the surface you see,
Right.
oh, they're playing together and they're doing, but
Yeah.
you know, like the true meaning and the underneath of it.
Yeah.
Ed is even asking, the depiction of how Native Americans were portrayed, is that racial, or was it just the images seen from a perspective of a child? And so that's where I think those are two differences. Like the child probably just sees, oh, they just play cowboys and Indians and they just, this is how they play. But then the racial disgustingness is what's really underneath it that you can see, which is not hard to kind of depict. And so those are the two things that I really, really, really struggled with.
Yeah, I said, I don't want to deny that there's racism there.
Mm-hmm.
I just found the treatment of women throughout the movie to be worse than.
And like I said, I was so thrown off by the first 10 minutes of what everything else that happened that I didn't even notice that. Like, to me, it just was, I barely was watching it at that point. I was like, I know what the story is. Like, I don't need to sit here and just over and over and over again listen to them talk about about everybody,
Right.
except for a white man. So yeah.
I will say that I think Disney did play up some of the native stereotypes from the play. In the play, Tiger Lily is actually a very strong character. And in a 75-minute movie, I can almost understand why they might have made it a little bit more simple. Not that that's good, but having to make some cuts somewhere. You also have to remember, other than Mary Blair, who helped with styling, every animator and every director and every story writer was male.
Yeah,
So,
it's not excusing it in any way, but
right,
it is also, again, a symptom. If you watch a lot of the live action movies from that time, women are not treated well in a lot of them. So I'm not saying it's okay, but to me, I think of other Disney movies of that time, of that era, and you don't see this level of the way women are treated. You see women that are much more equals. I mean, even in like Cinderella, where she's kind of, saved by the prince, she's still a character that, to a degree, tries to fight her way through, to have her own successes. She isn't like defined by the prince per se. So I think in a lot of other Disney movies of that time, you don't see this, and to see it here, it's, I don't know, disappointing, because I said it's a pretty entertaining movie, but those two bits, the racial stuff and the and the misogyny, to me, make it a problematic movie to a degree. I could completely understand why someone would not want to show this to their kids because of those things.
And it's interesting to me, granted, I know I've seen bits and pieces of this movie, and I remember knowing that Tinkerbell was not nice. Tinkerbell is not nice, which is so funny that she is one of the most loved character. I mean, you can find Tinkerbell's merchandise everywhere in the parks, right? But she is like, she's a brat, and that's me censoring myself. She is not nice. And it's so interesting to me. It makes me wonder how many of the people that love Tinkerbell, that have bought all the Tinkerbell merchandise, actually have watched the movie. Because I've owned some Tinkerbell things, and not realizing, like, that's not really a character trait that I want to be associated with. Whereas Wendy, again, I hadn't really watched the movie. I thought she was just kind of an airhead, just kind of like flighty and not really grounded, which is totally wrong. And when it comes to the Native American portrayal, Becky made a good point She said, could it be that J.M. Barrie was English and this was all he knew of Native Americans? Disney could not change the story, but could have modified.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
I'm just going to say, I had something to say about this comment. If that is true, if this was all he knew about the Native Americans, that's the problem, I guess, is that even now, in modern times, you see like, oh, well, I didn't know anything about this, so this is my opinion about it. There's no effort to kind of like go out and learn. It's rather just kind of take whatever anybody else is saying, I think this person is this way because that's all that I know, instead of going out of your way to kind of have the knowledge to change that. If they were going to do some modifications, they had every power in them to go in and try to change that. So, Derek.
For that, I will say that he wrote this in about 1900. So there was not the information. You have to remember that's the era of the Wild Bill, the Buffalo Bill and his shows that went around with Native Americans playing very stereotypical Native Americans. How many years did Disneyland have, and Disney World even have, a wooden cigar selling Indian on Main Street?
Wait, so isn't he still there?
I think
he wasn't there the last time I was there, but he's been there pretty recently.
So.
I know he's been there within the last 10 years because I used to see it while going down Parade Route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not excusing it. I just think that to a point we need to look at the time it was done. It did not age well.
Right.
But if you looked at this through 1953 eyes, look at Tonto and the Lone Ranger. Look at some of the other Native Americans. They're not portrayed well by anybody.
Right.
So
yeah, and I'm not saying it was okay, but it was of the time, and unfortunately, the to the degree the portrayal of women was of the time a little bit as well.
Yes.
But there were strong women being portrayed in movies and even in Disney movies, and this was definitely not one of them. Right. Even though I do agree with you, kind of Wendy was the best of the characters, but even then she was playing like a mother kind of role where she was trying to get everybody to behave, and but
I will say one of the only sets of kids that have both a living mother and a living father.
Right.
The Darling Children.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's
and in the play, they're actually gone for a long time, like weeks and weeks and weeks. And the mother is a much stronger character. She has sat up every night. She has held vigil by the door, by the open window. So in the play, the mother is a much stronger character. So, okay, guys. How many cups of Pixie Dust? What are you rating this? And we'll just start with Kate.
No,
Kate,
man.
How many cups out of 5?
2.
Okay.
This is so tough because
this is very tough.
I realize the problems with the movie, but I still can enjoy the movie beyond that. And again, we were watching it the other night. I was watching. My daughter's 17 years old now, so we were talking about all these issues as we were watching the movie, and I think we were enjoying the movie overall. But we were also, she understood, hey, this is not okay. That this is where it's behaved. So I think what's tricky about it is, as a parent, do you let your little kids watch it knowing that's going to pretty much go over their heads, but it's still there? Or do you sit down and try to explain it to them or whatever? So I have a hard time for me, as a classic bit of animation, I want to give it like a 4 out of 5, but there's no denying there's problems with it. I have a hard time recommending it for people to watch with their kids, because there are some problems in there. I think it depends how mature your kid is, that you can, I'm in favor of movies like this. I'm personally in favor that I think Song of the South should be available, but I think along with Song of the South, there should be at the beginning a discussion of why is this movie bad? And even something like this, I think there should be discussions of what's the issues with this movie. I mean, but it's still so well done, and the music's so good, and the songs, and as I said, Tinkerbell ended up becoming a classic character kind of out of this movie. I think Derek said at the beginning, like, she became known as a completely different character from the character she was in the movie. And if you watch the Pixie Hollow movies, she's a great character. Very positive,
Wow.
very positive role model. Women's, all her friends there, there's a bunch of women friends and everything like that. And they're very, for the most part, very positive with each other and everything like that. And those are fun little movies. I wouldn't call them, epics or, fantastic, but they're good little movies. And so she's very popular for that. And so I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a 3. I'll give it a 3. As I said,
Okay.
if you can get past the problems with it, I would maybe give it a 4.
Yeah.
But because of its place within the Disney pantheon of movies, but the problems I'll bring it down 1 to a 3.
I'll take the 1 that you would give it, and I'll give it a 1.
Ooh.
Because I if it was I like what Ryan said right at the end. 50 years from now, if we go watch another movie that came out today, what other problems are we going to have that are going to need to discuss? What new things are going to be? Because it's constantly changing, right? And so if 50 years from now, we find out that Tangled has some horrible back meaning, Mother Gothel is just this, a movie that I grew up with and I reminisce with Rapunzel so much. She is my princess, right? It would be really hard for me to give Rapunzel a horrible rating just because to me it's the childhood movie that I grew up with and loved so much. But because I was negative 45
40,
years
Math.
since this movie had come out, and it's not something that my parents never showed me. It's not something that I was ever brought up in. And I am now part of the generation that has the most social change going on. Like, it's just something that resonates very deep inside that I will not overlook the problems that are with this. And so that's why I just give it a 1. The story is cute, but I don't think it's really that good. And the best thing, and we've already talked about, is that Tinkerbell is an actual amazing character outside of the way that she is portrayed in Peter Pan. And I love the Pixie Hollow movies. I think her and Silver Mist and Iridessa are beautiful. So 1.
All right, Derek, bring us home.
I'm in the same line as Pete. This is something I grew up with. And Rebecca, I agree. I think 30, 40 years from now, who knows what's not 70, heck, almost 70 years from now, because this movie's almost 70 years old. I would even go, some of the movies 10 years ago. But anyway, I've got to give it a 3.25. If it's on, I'll probably, stick with it at least until commercial. But I'm not gonna. And again, I've used it as teachable moments. Like, we've actually talked about this story in some of my English classes, and use it as teachable moments and use it for some discussion. So using it like that, it can be good also. Ryan says they gave Tinkerbell that redemption arc with all the new stuff to make her great and approachable and sell more merchandise with a clear conscience. Let's be honest.
And I do like your comment. There are movies that are like 10 years old that I've watched recently and gone, oh man, that's bad even now, so
some of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah,
some stuff in there, I guess, but even some more like serious movies I've seen that I think have some problems with them. So I have a hard time beating on a 70-year-old movie that is, you know, it, you got to realize that that's going to be there. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to defend Gone with the Wind, but if you watch Gone with the Wind, there's a lot of racism in that movie, and it's still considered a classic. And it 10 years earlier than this movie, and there's a lot of movies from back then that are quite good, but you would still today look at how they treat women or how they treat minorities. West Side Story, great movie. The Puerto Rican the Puerto Rican gang are all white guys. For the most part, there's like 2 Puerto Ricans, and because that's the way they did things then. But it doesn't make it a bad movie.
Is Natalie Wood,
right? Yeah, Natalie Wood is right. Is the Puerto Rican, and she's like the least Puerto Rican person you're ever gonna meet. So I always feel like when you go back and look at these type of movies, you have to take it as its time, and it can take the movie down a notch, and this movie is definitely taken down a notch for what it is. But you also have to look at it of its time, because otherwise there's a lot of great movies that we would wipe off the face of the earth, and I don't think that's right either. So I think, and I'm not saying this is a great movie, but I think there's other movies out there that have problems that are really good movies, and that you have to take what's in there. Oh my God. What's the one, Breakfast at Tiffany's, one of the worst racial ever in that movie. You watch it and you cannot help but be offended by it, but there's great parts to that movie, and I don't know. It's so hard a thing to discuss, and I think the important thing. I mean, I'm a film buff, as you can probably tell from my discussions, and it's like you have to take those things into account, and when you're discussing a movie, include that in that discussion, but not necessarily discount the movie completely because it's of its time. That's all I want to say, I guess.
Right. Okay. Well, we're also going to catch up this week. We have gone a couple weeks without talking about Mighty Ducks. Okay. Mighty Ducks, to me, and I guess I'll start this one. Latest episode, the end of the latest episode reminded me of when in the original, where Coach Bombay made the, you're right, Coach, they are losers comments, and then redeems himself, but all they see is him talking down about him. All they saw was Evan, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Evan practicing with the other team. Evan's obviously coming back to the team. It's just a case of how does he make it up? I mean, if they start throwing little atoms at each other and quacking in detention, I'm gone, because that's what they played that one in the original. So I would not be a bit surprised to see the mom get either fired or quit from the law office. Hopefully it's quit and go work with Bombay at the eye shrink. Because there's a romance coming, and she's obviously not being appreciated, not being happy at or she's going to get promoted. I think it's going to go one of two ways. And then I really hope they don't have the Don't Bothers meet the Mighty Ducks for the state championship. I just, because part of me says mathematically they can't. What I would like to see is first round of the playoffs, they lose to the Mighty Ducks, but there's still college scouts there, and they decide to talk to Evan anyway. So, because that would go against the whole, well, you have to be on our team if you want a college scholarship. So, Kate, what have your thoughts been lately?
I just love this show. I love this show, and I know it's hokey, and it's like, I know, but it's been such a breath of fresh air of humor that I've needed in my life. It's not serious. It's it just makes me laugh. And even the hokiness makes me laugh. And Lauren Graham, in my eyes, can do no wrong. So I love it. I'm probably gonna keep loving it. So Pete, to you.
I'm with you. I really enjoy the show. I can't say it's because I'm a big Mighty Ducks fan, because I'd never seen the original movies until we saw the first one as a group. But I'm really enjoying. I generally like this type of story of the the underdogs and the kids, and they're not like. They don't make them like bratty or annoying or anything like that. Like, you genuinely like all of the kids that are on the Ducks team. I've enjoyed every episode. I enjoyed the part of this episode where they brought back the original Ducks. I thought that was really cool. I agree with Derek that the plot here with Evan, like, going back to the Ducks, like being tempted back to the Ducks, that's the first thing this show that I kind of don't believe. I don't believe he would have done that, because they treated him like trash. The other kids treated him like trash, and now, oh yeah, come on back. No, I don't think so. I don't know. So I didn't, and then it was so obvious that, like, the other kids on the team were going to find out at some point. Like, that was completely telegraphed. But there's not a lot of originality in the show. It's just, completely agree with Kate. I really enjoy it. Okay. What about you, Rebecca?
So yeah, we've been watching it as the episodes come out. Nick is still going strong as the number one character. I think that his whole persona is really the only, or not the only thing. This show has other redeeming qualities, but to me, it's still just not something that, like, I personally look forward to watching. I really hate, for some reason, the romantic connection between Emilio Estevez and the mom and all. Like, I don't know why, but I feel like it kind of grosses me out a little bit, if we're being honest. But I do think that this most recent episode with bringing back the other Ducks and the gala and all of that stuff this is probably the most interesting episode. But overall, it's a good show. I'll still watch it every Friday. I've got nothing else to do, and it's nice, but it's just a funny kid show, but it's okay.
I would like to see Nick. Nick's getting a little lost. I would like to see him have an episode that features him again. I think I would like to see him brought up a little bit more. But yeah,
I'll agree with that.
In general, I'd like to see more with the kids, because I agree with Rebecca that, like, the least interesting part of the show to me is this romance between
they literally had that three-way with the dad that came back and all. To me, I was like, this is just so weird. It's gross.
I guess I don't find it that bad, but, like, yeah, it's not.
I just don't like it.
It's not. That's the thing that works the least in the show, and I don't want that. I want more of the kids. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the other thing we needed to get caught up on was Big Shot. Okay. So, Rebecca, catch us up on Big Shot.
So, the most recent episode of Big Shot has finally Emma, the daughter of Marvin Korn, moving into California to live with him. She finds out that he's living in a hotel. He's too engulfed in work to really be anything with her or have a relationship with her. She ends up actually getting really jealous because he has a better relationship with the other teammate, Destiny, because she lost her dad. So he's trying to step in to, fill that role for her. And so she gets that, there's a little bit jealousy. She meets a boy. It's more teenage drama. To me, it's very 90210. The parents are very involved, and so are the teenagers and stuff, but it's just an all-girls thing. I do think that there's a lot of... I'm excited to see what they do with the video. Obviously, that the interview thing that they did for him is coming out this next episode. And so that Emma is going to have something to say about her dad, and he's going to see it. There's going to be this huge sentimental thing. They're kind of setting up for that, but I think it's a great show. I'm more interested in watching this one than I am watching Mighty Ducks, just because it's more my age bracket. Kate doesn't like that, but
I
mean,
still love you.
yeah, that's just it. That's just where I'm more of a serious watcher. I rewatch either the same shows I've already seen or stuff that just really clicks to me right from the beginning. So, yeah.
Okay.
Derek?
It's not terrible for me. I mean, it's just not growing on me. Coach, I don't feel an investment in his character right now. I don't see why I should care about him. Speaking of things that kind of gross me out, the one-on-one with him and the girl in the gym. I know it was supposed to be a father-daughter thing, but him putting his arm around a high school girl alone in a gym would get him fired. So, yeah, to be perfectly honest, if it's this or Falcon Winter Soldier, I'll go mow the lawn. So just, it's not for me. Okay?
You know what? I'm gonna throw myself under the bus here. I couldn't keep watching. I tried. I will, but Rebecca, I love you so much that I will power through and I will watch all of them specifically for you.
I will watch it for you. I'll watch it twice so that you don't have to. That's okay.
I just, after the last few, I mean, Ryan even said, "Big Shot, it's not it." I stopped watching after the first episode. No, thank you. It's just, yeah. So, Pete, what about you?
I'm team Rebecca right now. I'm actually enjoying the show. I like the Ducks. I like the Ducks show better, but I like aspects of the show. I really liked the plot with the part when they focused on the daughter and her experiences and everything like that. The least interesting. The problem I have with the show is the least interesting thing about the show is John Stamos's character, and he's the focus. So I think a show that spent more time focusing on the girls would be a better show. And I 100% agree with what Derek just said about like him putting his arm around the girl in the, I mean, even though it was in the open gym space, I'm just like, oh, you are gonna, he's gonna get in trouble at some point, because this is the second, right? He got in the car with the star player in the first episode, and at least that was out in public where other people were around. But this was, and it's just like, someone could walk in and go, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing?" And like, I don't know, talk about like, modern times versus older times. It's, I don't know, but anyways,
that's
I want to see less of John Stamos and more of the team, but I'm gonna keep watching it. I think my wife's really enjoying it too. So
yeah, that seems to be just the overarching of these two shows. They kind of have similar stories. There's the basketball team really trying to make it to the champions, trying to get up into D2 instead of D3, and then the same thing with the Don't Bothers trying to win their championship and prove that you don't have to be mean to win and all that stuff. But they focus on the adults of the show, but then it really is just like a disconnect.
I don't get that, because this is Disney Plus, right?
Yeah.
And we got coming in a couple of weeks. We got High School Musical, the series, which was definitely about the kids. I mean, there were a couple adult characters, but the adult characters are on the side, and the show is about the kids. And I completely agree with what you're saying, Rebecca. Why are these shows focused on the adults? It's not adults that are, I mean, maybe adults are watching with their kids, but what's going to get people to watch these shows are that the kids are going to like it.
Yeah.
So I don't get the focus on the adults in either show.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan is definitely Team Derek on this one. Gina says, she agrees, super inappropriate. Again, coming from another teacher, that's just you don't do that. As I said, talk about a 1950s move. The coach putting his arm around the girl and bringing her in as a daughter. I mean, and Ryan says if he's going to look at an actor that hasn't aged, I'd choose Paul Rudd every day. I would argue John Stamos has aged and not well.
The age train hit him in the last couple years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but I am looking forward to the new Paul Rudd one coming out in November. So next week, we are going to be talking about Star Wars The Bad Batch. Okay. This is a spin-off of the Disney Clone Wars animated series. This is a group of stormtroopers that each have their own specific trait or characteristic or ability that they put them all together because stormtroopers are all supposed to be the same, and they put them together for certain missions. Also, we're going to be bringing in Diamonds in the Rough. We want to know, what have you guys been watching that we need to bring onto the show that's maybe not new, but is relatively new? So if you have suggestions, definitely email us at plusplatoon@gmail.com. Also, please like, subscribe, share. We are at facebook.com/plusplatoon. We are youtube.com/plusplatoon. Twitter, we are at plusplatoon. Instagram, we are plusplatoon. It's not hard to remember.
Are we Plus Platoon? Is that what we are? Are we Plus Platoon?
Usually.
I think we are.
On most of them, yeah.
Guys, we need to have like a fan base name. I know people have tried to come up with them. I don't really like platooners or like
Definitely not plussers.
Platoonites.
not plussers.
Plussers.
I don't know, but we
PPs is probably.
PPs? No.
I just made myself laugh.
I'm good with PPs.
Yeah. Ryan, thank you. The worst part about Wednesday is waiting for next Wednesday. Thank you so much. We really do
Ryan.
appreciate that. So,
For
but send us names. Yeah.
for anyone that follows along and watches the shows beforehand, I haven't watched it yet, but the first episode of Bad Batch, you think, it's an animated cartoon show. It's going to be 20 minutes long. Well, the first episode apparently is a little over an hour.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
make
Really?
time
75
appropriately for
minutes.
that.
An hour and 15 minutes.
Is it an hour and 15 minutes? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not
Okay.
really it's
That's as long as Peter Pan.
yeah. So I haven't watched it yet, but I'm definitely going to check that out. And I don't know, is there a second episode coming on Friday or?
Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
Friday, there's a second episode coming out. So we'll actually be talking about the first two episodes. So, okay. And Gina says it's so good. So hopefully we will enjoy it and bring it in next week. So with that, everyone, I want to say thank you, and we will see you next week. Good night,
Bye,
guys.
everybody. Thanks for watching this week's episode of the Plus Platoon. Be sure to subscribe to the Plus Platoon podcast to keep getting great content each week. Then head over to Apple Podcast and leave those 5-star reviews, as they help make the Plus Platoon visible to even more Disney Plus fans. Also, go to YouTube and like and subscribe to the Plus Platoon channel, where you can watch all future episodes live. If you have a question for the Plus Platoon, please send us an email to plusplatoon@gmail.com or connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @plusplatoon.
The Plus Platoon is a Disney Plus fan podcast and is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or the Disney Plus streaming service. All opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the individual hosts and in no way reflect the views of the Walt Disney Company.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for next week's episode, because the Plus Platoon is to be continued.